나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교. Hi friends, hope you're healthy. This finds you healthy and secure. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks for being here, all of you. Today, we're going to talk about the three realms of existence. This is an aspect of the 3,000 realms that doesn't get talked about a whole lot. Not in reference to the 3,000 realms anyway. These are going to be familiar terms, but when we hear the title of this teaching, or this general moniker given to the breadth of teachings from Tendai on the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment of life, or the thought moment, we know the 10 worlds. We've been talking about the 10 worlds. We know they're intermixed, mutual possession. Each world has the others in it. So we have 10 times 10 gives us 100. 100 possibilities, all vying for the conditioning of our experience. Each of those 100 world combinations, salads, are flavored or take shape through the 10 factors of life. So they come from a mental potentials in each moment and instantiate through the 10 factors of samsaric life. And as we're about to find out, since that 10 worlds, 10 factors is 1,000, 10 times 10 times 10, we're not at 3,000 yet. So where's this missing multiplier of 3? It's the 3 realms. And no, it is not past, present, and future. Okay? The 3 realms are samsaric realms, specifically. So you have these 10 worlds that are potential mental cognitions, mental conditions, mental tendencies, times themselves, which is 100 possible tendencies that come into being in the human mind through 10 factors, and all of those 1,000 potential experiences and their mixture instantiates through the 3 realms. This is where we get 3,000. And as I read through this, my contention is that we're really dealing with 30,000 realms in each thought moment. It just keeps multiplying, and I'll explain why I say that in a moment. So the 3 realms, very quickly, and I'm reading from some prepared text that I made some time ago. Many times when I have to keep myself on track, as I put a lot of these research notes together many years ago as I was creating books to discuss different aspects of Buddhism in relation to other practices, or to elucidate certain terms. And so they're kind of my cliff notes that help me stay on track. I don't prepare any scripts for these videos, as I'm sure you know by now. So I apologize if I read from this It's not like other things that I've read, but and then introduce my own clarifications, elucidations, whatever, opinions. But the three realms can be, two of them are very easy to understand. They're self and environment. We talk about that all the time. But the third one is elusive. We don't talk about it enough in our Buddhist practice because it's an assumed knowledge. Nichiren didn't, he did talk about them, but he didn't talk about them as much as he did the second chapter of the Lotus Sutra, the expedient means, or the lifespan of the Tathagata chapter, which is his foundational mic drop moment on the practice of Lotus Sutra Buddhism, right? But nonetheless, this is incorporated into those teachings. So it's important for you and I to discuss this, that we understand it fully. Because all of these potential worlds, potential, I keep saying it that way for a reason, potential mixes of these mental states, as they come into being, the formations. Remember, in Buddhism, we're very much about the formations of thought, action, deeds, because there lies the karmic clue as to how we make the decisions we make, how we act the way we do. Word salad. Got salads on my mind. So, from this text, Sanseken, the three realms of existence, the realm of the five components or aggregates is the first realm. And this is where we stumble. What are the five aggregates? Well, not only do we not talk about it enough, but there's several labels for that. You'll hear about the five components, or what's another word? I know the aggregates, the skandhas, or the khandhas, or it depends on translations. And you hear all these words, and there's that salad thing again. And we tend to get lost in what the heck are we talking about? And I'm going to dive into that in the next video. I don't think, right here, I just want you to understand the three realms. The three realms are the five components or aggregates. And what I'll say about those for the purposes of this conversation is that those aggregates, I've talked a lot about energy and work being karma. And when energy and work instantiate, when they combine, they are a formation of some phenomena, some thing. And the moment that happens, that instantiation has tendencies and conditions. Whatever the work derives from and into, as it combines with other karma, other energies and formations, there are tendencies happening there. There are, what is it instantiating, in other words? And how do the multiple instantiations, the agglomerations, the amalgams, what do they form? From formation, there is a form namarupa, a thing with a name for the thing, right? And that could be anything from a toe to temperature sensations to consciousnesses. It can get super, super elaborate, right? I've already talked about the millions of components of DNA, and a DNA is a cell. Or is it a molecule? It's a very small thing, and yet it has innumerable, you can't even count how many actions have come together, agglomerated together to compose a small part of this larger thing that's ultimately being manifested. So that's where the word components or aggregates comes from. This is a concept that Buddha Shakyamuni was trying to explain the functions of the mind and life itself. For people to begin to understand that we, I, you, self, ego, is all a construct of an immense agglomeration of formations of phenomena. Phenomena, not being least of which, is your eye consciousness, your speaking, your oral consciousness, your hearing consciousness, your feeling consciousness. And for more on that, I'll refer you to the 9 consciousnesses of Buddhism. I have videos on this. The 9 consciousnesses. Buddhahood being the 9th. So this is where this wrestling with English comes up with aggregates, because these aggregates of karma form consciousnesses. And it's through those consciousnesses that we experience the potential worlds through the 10 factors as they manifest, and we experience them. This is why they're a multiplier, oddly, of one of the 3 rather than an additional 5, because there are 5 skandhas or khandhas or aggregates. The second is the realm of living beings. This experience we have of multiplicity, this samsaric identity of self and other, this realm of living beings. And the third is the realm of the environment, because you can have no thing without the thing within something, right? You can have a cup of water and say you have a cup of water and identify that cup of water as a thing. But if you take that cup of water and you go scuba diving in the ocean, you no longer have a cup of water. Where'd the water go? The identifier for that cup of water was the cup. That you still have, but you can't identify the water in the cup because it's all water. So by distinguishing that cup of water outside of water, you then have a cup of water. That make sense? All right. I'm not going to go too deep into that. It's going to get silly. So this concept originally appeared in the treatise on the Great Perfection of Wisdom. Remember that one. And 10 Dais, 538 to 597, adopted it as a, actually those dates should be, oh no, that's right, adopted it as a component of his doctrine of the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. The concept of the 3 realms of existence views life from 3 different standpoints and explains the existence of individual lives in the real world, samsara. The 5 components, a living being as their temporary combination, the aggregates, and that being's environment all manifest the same one of the 10 worlds at any given point in time. Okay, that was a word salad. So let's take that apart for a moment. It's an important concept of the 5 aggregates, those consciousness, those formations of consciousness, to also realize that the formation, although there's all this dissection of what is a khandha, what is eye consciousness, what is oral consciousness, feeling consciousness, right? The Nidana talks about all of these. And what we're doing is actually applying and dissecting the idea of Nidana. Nidana is the coming for, the instantiation of these aggregates from energy and work to agglomeration to manifestation. You start to look at all this process, and it seems like it takes a lengthy amount of time. But in fact, it's such a dissection that all of this occurs in every instance. This is the mind-twisting part of the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. It's very important to understand that even these components or aggregates or skandhas or khandhas or whatever you want to label these processes that lead to an instantiation of sight, hearing, touching, feeling, that those aggregates only are a spark in time of life. They mutate every single moment as well. All of this is temporary. Temporary in the most temporary sense, in that it's like I've defined before, like the drawing of a line. When you studied in geometry, a line was not this black mark or colored mark, whatever, that if you zoom in to each one of those points on a line, it's actually microscopically, it looks like a universe. Because a point is only a location, it's not a thing. It borders on a thing because it's a location for a thing. But a point is not a thing. A dot is a thing, but a dot is a lot of things. A point is just a location, and a line is a locus of these points, one after another, very much like our life is, a moment-to-moment, point-to-point existence. And so what the 3,000 realms is digging into is what these points are constructed of. What makes them things instead of just indicators. And so it's important to understand, even though we put all these terms and ideas and all these concepts together, as human beings, we tend to pile on. I mean, that's what khandha means, right? A pile, an aggregate. It's lots of tendencies and conditions, lots of karma coming together to create a thing. But that's a spark, a little flicker of light. It's a momentary thing, and it's followed by another moment, another moment, another moment. Why is it important to understand that? Because it indicates how ephemeral our experience of life is. We tend to see life as an agglomeration of birth, pain, sickness, old age, death, right? That's where we started from with Siddhartha Gautama. But what we're learning through the scholarship of Mahayana is how to understand the basis for that experience and how to then negotiate that experience with that knowledge to take it apart, wrestle it under our control, and not be affected by this amazing process. Be awed by the process rather than sucked into it. Okay? So, the 5 components, a living being as their temporary combination. That could be a whole paragraph in itself. So there's a lot of information squeezed into that part of the sentence. The 5 components, in other words, these activities of formation, temporarily, moment to moment, coming together themselves, aggregating themselves into a life experience of a mind. Temporarily, moment to moment. See, you begin to understand as you read through these things, the implications are repeated constantly. But if you don't know to look for them, it sounds like something completely different. In a way, you could say that this is repeating the same idea with different words, different language, different ideas about the process. So one of the three realms itself has the formations of consciousness in it. And to be completely inclusive, we would have to add to the khandhas the other consciousnesses, all 9 of them. And now we have another multiplier of 9, almost 10. So we're already at 30,000, right? But also we experience all of those realms, or the formation of those realms, within a being's environment as well as the living being. And each of these are additional seasonings on each of the 10 worlds, which never happen in and of themselves. They're always combinations, shifting moment to moment. And the bottom line is, what we get to is an understanding of human life as a very volatile, temporary, impermanent slurry of cognition. And so, again, the argument can be made in Buddhism, what are you hanging on to? Do you not see how fragmentary, momentary, and completely not random, but influenced constantly in the process itself, very unsettled, that you could go from one state to another in an instant, right? You ever been in a quiet setting, whether it's in a building or in your living room or outside, and somebody close to you pops a bag, a paper bag or a plastic bag? How many worlds did you just go through? How many perceptions? How many life instantiation moments of change did you just go through in a second? From maybe you were focused on reading a book, and suddenly that loud bang sent you all over the place. You're trying to catch your breath. You're trying to resolve your hearing. You're trying to understand what just happened. Your mind's going all over the place. And where do you land for a moment? Are you angry? Are you frightened? Did you lose the control of your bladder? Are you laughing because it was so tickling? What consciousnesses were instantly instantiated when somebody popped that bag without your knowing they were going to do so? That shock, right? That shock of your mental awareness going, like suddenly opening the window and hearing all the monkeys screaming at you. You see, you experience this big time, all the time. What Buddhism is doing is it's identifying it as, even in those quiet moments, it's still happening. And ask yourself why you were shocked. Why did this disturb your life, your existence? You maybe were attached to the silence, attached to the book, attached to the mind, the dreams you were having about what you're reading about. Maybe it's a fantasy, maybe it's a fiction, maybe it's a text, maybe it's a word problem in math you're trying to solve. Whatever, you're engrossed is the word we would use. And it is engrossed, because you're investing all of your senses into, you're really attached. I'm not saying that's always a bad thing. I'm just identifying this is what we do all the time. And there are activities where we can really identify that we're doing it, right? When we're in the flow. And anything that disturbs that flow feels like a shock because it's unexpected. And how we respond to the unexpected is quite telling about our tendencies and conditions overall. All 3,000 realms in each moment, where are we gravitating? Do we gravitate toward calm? Do we gravitate toward humor? Do we gravitate toward fear? Right? So the realm of the 5 components, what I wrote here, an analysis of the nature of living entities in terms of how it responds to its surroundings. Yeah, because the karma is an instantiation of tendencies and conditions, and you can only understand tendencies and conditions from the standpoint of observation. And our humanness, our samsaric instantiation of this body with these senses, consciousnesses, is experiential. It's not theoretical. It's experiential. We experience these skandhas in each moment, albeit colored and influenced by the 10 worlds and the 10 worlds within the 10 worlds as they instantiate for us from whatever tendencies they have collectively through the 10 factors of life. This is why the multiplication, because they're all in an instant involved in your experience of your life, life in general, but it's your life in general. The 5 components are form, perception, conception, volition, and consciousness. And I'm not going to go into each of those today, but just ponder those words and what they mean in light of what we've learned about Buddhism. Once again, the 5 components are form. Everything has form, from this robe to your thought about this robe and this beard and these beads. Thought is formation too. It's form. Perception, what do you do with that? How do you perceive that form? How do you perceive that form? Well, through some conception of that form. These are all agglomerations of energy, of karma. Your conception of this form has to do with how you built your conception, your aggregate of conception. Your volition, do you care? Do you want to know? Do you don't want to know? Well, how are you applying your experience of the world, of your world, and how does it, or if it does, include this particular perception at this particular moment? And how do you do it? In all of these things, how do you access that experience? Through consciousnesses. Do you experience it visually? Do you experience orally? Do you have to say it to yourself out loud to know, to experience what it is you're looking at with your eye consciousness? Does that make you immediately want to reach out and touch it, feel it, know it that tactily? These are all consciousnesses. Also in your consciousnesses are the very nature of your thinking. Not just your brain and your nervous system, but your mind. Because your mind is combining all of these consciousnesses, these processes. And in a very specific way, through a very specific world and combination of worlds, using your factors of life, you then perceive, conceive, See how all of this, it's like dissecting this little tiny moment. What's in it? This is what we're talking about. Form includes everything that constitutes the body and its sense organs, the whole schlemiel, through which one perceives the outer world. Perception means the function of receiving or apprehending external information through one's sense organs, and conception indicates the function by which one grasps and forms some idea or concept about what has been perceived. Volition means the will to initiate action following the creation of the conceptions without what has been perceived, about what has been perceived. And consciousness is the cognitive function of discernment and integrates the components of perception, conception, and volition. It distinguishes an object from all others, recognizes its characteristics, and exercises value judgments such as distinguishing between right and wrong, or black and white, or hot and cold. It's not always that binary, but it's a distinguishing feature. And isn't this describing the exact components of samsara that make this world a world of attachment? Because all of this dissection, all of this minutia of understanding is itself the mechanism of the attachment, which ironically produces our fascination with the minutia and the way things work. It's all a deep dive into attachment, analyzing itself, if you will. Okay? From another viewpoint, while consciousness is regarded as the mind itself, the components of perception, conception, and volition are regarded as mental functions. Form corresponds to the physical aspect of life, and the other four components to the spiritual aspect of life. And once again, I caution you about that word spiritual. In Buddhism, spiritual is mental cognition. It's the way the mind works, not just cognition, because we're dissecting beyond that. So in Buddhism, I've often called it the science of the mind, understanding how the mind creates for our experience of life its particular way of seeing, understanding, and how it collects data to be used over and over again while we refine our ideas about things, actually is a lot more specific to each individual because of the mountain of karma and formations that have come together to create it. The principle of the five components, aggregates, explains how life expresses each of the 10 worlds differently. Someone in the world of hell, for example, will perceive form, a conception of, and react to the same object in a completely different manner than someone in the world of bodhisattvas. And for a real world discussion on that, look up my video on the fountain analogy. Now, having said all of that, why do we do this? Well, partly because we're attached to knowing. But when you really attain the freedom, the liberation of that attachment, as your Buddha mind is capable of doing, you can walk back through all of this and simply watch it as this wonderful play, not just of your own, but of everyone, of how everyone plays with the same information to their own satisfaction of their attachments. And that's what holds them, us, we, in samsara, thus begetting suffering. That if we can get above this huge mess of karma and simply see it as like a stream is bubbly water, cool, refreshing water, and all of its features like the bubbles and the color changes and the way it runs and clings to moss or rocks, all of the distinguishing characteristics of what make a stream, from our point of view, it's an amazing fascination. We can sit and listen and look and watch and feel a babbling brook. Poets talk about that experience, right? Well, what if you could see human life the same way? Right? It's hard to conceive of that. But this is what we're chasing. Buddhahood. Our ability to be observers of this process rather than sucked into it like rapids that completely control our sensation, our experience. The realm of the living beings, obviously the individual living being, formed of a temporary union of the 5 components, actually 9 consciousnesses, but who manifest or experiences any of the 10 worlds. The realm of the living beings refers to individuals as an integrated whole, but since no living being exists in perfect isolation, it is also taken to mean the collective body of individuals who interact with one another. See, the distinguishing thing starts to melt away as you take apart the experiential karmic reality that's at play here. We have this illusion of self, other, distancing, isolation. And we can talk about that and how that forms, but that is not actually what's happening. We're individuated in samsara, but actually, collectively, we're all the same. We're all energy and work. The realm of environment, the place, land where living beings dwell and carry out our life activities, the state of the land is a reflection of the state of life of the people who live in it. What does that make you remind you of? The state of the land. Entire sects of Buddhism are based on Amida's pure land. But this is a state of land. So if you change your battlements, your ships, your fleet of these karmic instantiations through all of your consciousnesses, and you shift them toward Buddhahood, the Buddhahood of Buddhahood, the clarity of the observer, then the state of your land is a state of Buddhahood, the Buddha land. It's not specific to Amida. Amida Buddha is a personification. It's not even a real thing. It's just a story to help people conceive of a path to this pure instantiation of perception, experience. Experience being perception, cognition, volition, the whole 9 consciousnesses. But from the shore rather than the middle of the pond or river or ocean. A land manifests any of the 10 worlds according to which of the 10 worlds dominate in the lives of the inhabitants. That's what I just said. The same land also manifests different worlds for different individuals. My Buddha land may not be Tom's Buddha land because Tom hasn't experienced Buddha yet. He may be in the rapture land, in the hell, hunger, and animality land, in the bodhisattva of hell, hunger, and animality land. It shifts moment to moment, point to point. It's hard to grasp that blindingly fast mental cognition experience. It's hard to grasp how quickly we can change our lands. I go back to the bag popping behind you reading a book. It's faster than you can measure. And this is why the thousands of realms in a single thought moment is just a way to understand that it's very difficult to get to a mental place and where you're unaffected moment to moment, that you can actually stay resident, albeit moment to moment, but it is unperturbable moment to moment. Just think of a person who's very anxious about everything. That person may react and have a cataclysmic experience before the bag even pops. They might hear the bag moving through the air. They're so in tune to any disturbance that they hear the pop before they hear the pop. Their land is super fragile. In addition, the three realms themselves are not to be viewed separately, but as aspects of an integrated whole, which simultaneously manifests any of the 10 worlds. So that's my little write-up on the three realms of existence. It's a dissection of each and every moment and the activities that are present in each moment of experience. And again, this is the mechanism of Buddhist scholarship, to investigate things to such minute detail that your only response, other than grasping it, is the nature of our endeavor. That reaching for and instantiating Buddhahood, invoking our Buddha-ness, our ability to see all of this play without being affected by it, is no small feat. And somehow, to the human mind, it's helpful to understand that it's super hard to understand. That somehow buoys our resolve up, because we know, why am I not feeling that right now? Well, because it's complicated. And I need to work harder at staying in that Buddha land, staying in that enlightenment. And little by little, every day, every month, every year, I'm more resident. I'm shifting my tendencies and the conditions for those tendencies. I'm shifting them, if you can say high and low, high being Buddha-ness and low being hell. Again, they're not individual. They're all mixed all the time in every single moment. But where do you gravitate? Do you gravitate through the three lower worlds? Many of us do, and many of us do for moments and then not others. Do you gravitate toward your attraction to humanity, tranquility, and does a moment of rapture cause you all kinds of disturbance? Or is that where you want to be all the time? Like a living orgasm? Could you even withstand that? Because it's quite difficult. I don't mean to experience, I mean to be in the experience. It's kind of good that that's a very ephemeral, tiny moment, few seconds. Because if it lasted hours, first of all, it wouldn't seem like rapture anymore. And secondly, I don't know if our human bodies could withstand that kind of experience. This is why it's one of the lower six worlds, right? But I'm sure you know somebody who loves to be in the world of learning. Not that that's the sole world they're into, but that's where they gravitate. Whether they're experiencing a horrible accident or breaking a leg, or they're on stage performing in front of a crowd with elation and excitement or physical pains, all of these things, they tend to see all their experiences through the lens of learning. Wow, I actually heard and felt, and I think I smelled the bone break. I mean, people like that, everything's about dissecting the experience rather than the experience itself. Although we're fooling ourselves, but we tend toward that world of learning or realization. We live for that aha moment. I mean, that's okay, but this is the higher worlds, or the higher four worlds, right? Because they lead to our understanding and our ability to move into the bodhisattva realm. Because becoming a bodhisattva requires a lot of aha moments. Those moments allow us to put certain skandhas, consciousnesses, experiences, so on and so forth, worlds, into their proper place. I understand that. I understand that those moments can still occur, but they won't rule my life. If every little thing turns you into just a big basket of worry and concern and depression, then the worlds that you tend toward are not bodhisattva and Buddhahood. They tend to be in the lower worlds, right? But don't make the mistake of saying, I'm in the world of hell, or I'm in the world of this or that. You may be gravitating that way, but believe me, the other worlds are there too. Even Buddhahood. You never know when the inspiration will hit you to see things clearly. It could be in the midst of the worst moment of your life. Because those are judgments we're making with our mind. And the nature of those judgments is formations. It's all of these worlds. So again, if you can attain Buddha-ness for just any amount of time, your filters that you impose, your judgments that you impose, shift. And that's all we're doing with Buddhism. We're shifting these filters on up the ladder, if you will, to the point where our filters are simply entertained by all of these other worlds that we too experience, but they don't control us. I hope that makes some sense. The 3 realms is our multiplier of 3. That's how we get to 3,000 or 30,000, however you choose to add them up. The multiplication isn't the important part. I just crushed a bunch of people in the world of learning. Right? It's not I know that number. I know how we got to it. Good for you. But you really know how we got to it? Because it ain't about the number. It's about this fascinating, amazing process that leads to this very experience. And it's going on, this whole huge myriad forces of life, karma, collecting in a very specific momentary way for you to experience the life you're experiencing in your environment as you see it. $3,000 realms in a single thought moment. It's the actual construction of life experience. And with Buddhism, we can clear some lenses up to see it better and better. Understanding by seeing, by witnessing, not simply being pushed around by it, right? All right, I've talked long enough. Oh, yeah. Thank you for sticking it out all the way to the end. That really helps this YouTube thing, I hear. But I'm much more concerned with your practice and that you have learned something here, maybe gained an insight, maybe had one of those aha moments. I hope so. That's what I want for you, just as I look for it every day in myself. And with that, I immense appreciation. Like, subscribe, share, the deal. But this is about your practice. Strengthen your practice. Understand your practice. Understanding how massive it really is really makes it, I think, a little easier to deal with the work. Chanting for 30 minutes can sometimes seem like a chore, but if you know the nature of your goal, it's very inspiring. Maybe 30 minutes isn't enough. Maybe I need to chant a couple of hours on this one. I'm really being buried right now. Hey, that's great. Do that. There's not a whole lot of rules here, even though it sounds like there are. This is about you enjoying your life experience. That's it. Don't let the dogma of life experience drag you down. I had a conversation with a couple of folks yesterday. I was saying, yeah, we tend to look at those past points like they're indelible things. They're gone. They don't exist anymore. It's like we insist on carrying this trail of hefty bags full of crap from the past. And I said, I'm just hoping my trail of hefty bags is ripping open and dumping some of that stuff as I go, because I'm less enamored of remembering stuff and much more enamored these days of experiencing this now. And I'm absolutely convinced that the better I experience this now, that the next moments will keep me in there, in that life space, in that land. That's Buddhism. It's really simple. Sounds silly to say that after all of this dialogue, right? But I promise, I'm done with this video. Thanks again for your amazing support, whether it's contributions or just downloading podcasts, sharing this video. We're all doing the work. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. With deep appreciation. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.